Welcome to our second episode of Night School. I'm joined by Bob.
I'm here, ready to learn.
Yeah, so we got a lot of good positive feedback about our first video, which was Why Dungeons, sort of kind of making a pitch to you. And for people who haven't joined us before, my goal with this, or I should say your goal.
Yeah, I'm the one that's really excited.
Right, is to learn how to run a campaign.
Yes.
And last time, in our first episode, I basically made a pitch that I thought that before you start creating worlds and universes and campaigns, you should start with something simple.
Yeah, because I want to do all that.
Yeah, of course.
But Bob's Dungeon also sounds cool.
Yeah, so we're going to start with a dungeon. And this is a time-honored tradition that goes back to the very beginning of the game. It's in the name of the game. And I think it teaches you the training wheels. It's the training wheels for you. It's the training wheels for your player as well.
That's good.
So when you're going to go and create a dungeon, I like to think of it in two stages, a design stage and a development stage. So the design stage is where you're going to sort of think of the high concepts of the dungeon.
Okay.
What are some of the themes that you're trying to, feel out with this dungeon? What are some of the ideas that you want to express in the dungeon? What are some of the, basic concepts that you want to really lay out? Development is more of the number crunching part. That's where you're going to go in and you're going to, for example, in 5th edition, okay, you could design a dungeon. It's a prison. It's an ice prison. Okay, that's maybe like my concept. Well, that could be a level 1 dungeon. It could be a level 10 dungeon. It could be a level 15 dungeon.
I see what you're saying. That's development part.
That's development.
Okay.
Development's where you're going to go and say, okay, what creatures are appropriate for a dungeon of this level?
Okay.
What treasure is appropriate for a dungeon of this level? What traps are appropriate for a dungeon of this level, right? So the concept, the design, you could almost think of these as like blueprints that could be used for anything, right? You could design a dungeon and you could use it for Pathfinder 2 and you could use it for 5th edition. It's not really a 5th edition dungeon or a Pathfinder 2 dungeon until you put in the development work and actually put in Pathfinder 2 monsters or put in 5th edition monsters.
So that's how you can almost do conversions.
It is a good way to do a conversion. Just take a step back and say, what's the rough outline of this of this dungeon? And so today I thought we could start with the design phase, and we are going to start now. Going back to the design phase, there is sort of two ways to approach this, which is sort of a bottom up or a top down design. So what does that mean? Well, it means you can, and sometimes you're working both sides simultaneously. Sometimes you need a dungeon to fulfill a specific role in your game.
In like your world or something?
Exactly.
Okay.
Like you already know, I need a dungeon that is the prison of some NPC because that's where our game is headed. So you have this idea. And so now you go, okay, I know from the beginning it's going to be a prison. And so I need to put things in it that would be in a prison. It needs to have a jail cell. And
we don't need to do that exactly, but that is something that you could think about if you have the world sort of already going.
Correct. Okay. I mean, the only thing I would say that the only top-down constraint that we have is we know that this is going to be the introduction to a new group of players.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's going to be level 1 players.
Yes.
So there might be certain considerations that we would make for this dungeon that lend it towards that end.
Yeah, makes sense.
So a bottom-up design, on the other hand, is sort of like thinking about nope, I am just thinking what are ideas that I think would be cool? And we'll figure out the story later. So top-down design would be, I have a jail cell. Okay, what would be in a jail, I have a prison. What would be in a prison? I don't know, a torture chamber, a jail cell. You're building, you already have the idea, now you're filling in the details. Bottom up is it'd be so cool if the final boss was a dragon.
So now you're talking my language.
Right. And now we don't know what the concept is, but we're also, I have this idea about a room with a pool full of blood that comes alive. Right. Okay. These are all cool ideas. Okay. Now what we're going to do is that's starting at the bottom. We're going to build up to, okay, what is this place that has a dragon and a pool full of blood? And we'll figure out the details as we go up. And we'll come up and we'll end with a concept that ties it all together.
Okay.
But we started with the details instead of the high level.
Now, could you do part of the...
You can go back and forth.
Because,
Well, to put case in point, it's a little bit more, your dungeon will feel more cohesive if the thematic elements all tie together.
That's more top down.
Well, that's anything.
Yeah.
One of the big mistakes, we talked about this before, one of the big mistakes of dungeon design is the kitchen sink approach. People draw a map first. That's almost always wrong, to draw a map first. They draw a map and then they just start populating it with monsters and traps. And there's no theme. There's no cohesive tying it together. You're just putting in stuff that you think is cool. And that's a horrible way to design.
That's actually what I thought I was going to do.
Correct.
I was like, I could draw, and I got my bestiaries and monster manuals.
That's the worst way to design. That's how you're going to end up with a bad dungeon. What you're going to end up with then is when people think of bad dungeons, they think of underground rooms with no sense of cohesiveness, where we're just wandering from place to place, fighting a variety of different monsters that really don't do anything or interact in any way.
All right, well, Bob's Dungeon's going to be different. Bob's Dungeon's going to be sweet.
Well, we hope it is, right? So one of the things,
if it isn't, then we need to figure that out.
So when with bottom, now there's nothing wrong with bottom up design, because you're like, I had this idea for a cool concept. The challenge there is figuring out elements that tie it together, so that it isn't just a random pile of nonsense, but it's a more structured and cohesive dungeon.
It might take. It sounds easier, but it actually could be harder.
It depends on how you think.
Yeah.
It depends on what kind of creativity mode you're going for. And it also depends, like if you know that your dungeon needs to be a prison, well then that's easy because you're already thinking in that respect. But if you also know that your dungeon you really want to have it to have these elements, then that's much different. And that also starts informing your decision, right? Like if it's a prison and it's an active prison, well that's going to be a very different type of dungeon than one that is an ancient ruin that nothing and no one lives in, right? Like it might have different types of traps. It might have different types of monsters. Right? If you're in some old abandoned ruin, it might be littered with giant rats and giant centipedes and all sorts of vermin. But if it's like a prison, well, it's probably not going to have just random vermin running around, right? There's people here. They probably try to keep it somewhat clean. So again, that can really inform your decisions. So today, I thought we could maybe kind of think about the high level concept.
Okay.
Now, before we get into that though, This is one of the most important rules. This is the first rule.
Get my little pencil out here.
This is the first rule of Dungeoncraft.
Okay.
So during the 90s, Dragon Magazine, for about 2.5 years, published a series of articles. And it was called Dungeoncraft. And it was a...
Is this where Professor Dungeon Master gets his name from?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, but if you watch this, let us know.
Yeah. And it was written by a man named Ray Winiger, who was a sort of an industry MVP at the time. And then he kind of went away. And now he actually heads up 5th edition D&D's R&D group. So he wrote this really great article. And in this series of articles, and it was very impactful to me on how I think of designing dungeons. Obviously, I have a lot of other input sources, but I think it's a worthwhile thing to share with you. And what the Dungeoncraft articles identified is that the books, the Dungeon Master guides and the monster manuals and the bestiaries and whatever, are very good at teaching you the rules of the game, but they are very poor at teaching you what you're supposed to do with all these.
Okay.
And I still feel like to this day that a lot of these rule books, especially the Pathfinder 2 rule books, are very bad. Very bad. Pathfinder 2 is very bad at teaching you actually how to make a cool adventure or dungeon. If I was being cynical, if I was being tinfoil hat, I would say it's because they want you to go buy their adventures and their adventure paths.
I mean, it is a business.
It is a business. So if they teach you how to make an adventure, then you don't need to go out and buy their adventure paths.
Correct. That actually makes sense.
So I don't know if that's technically true, but
I mean, either way, I think it'd be cool to learn. I like their APs, and I would like to learn.
Yeah. So anyways, what Ray's first rule of Dungeoncraft was this: never force yourself to create more than you must. And he actually went on to say, this rule is so important, you should write it on the inside cover of your Dungeon Master's Guide. And if you go back...
All right, hold on a second.
If you never force yourself to create more than you must. And if you go back to my 2nd edition Dungeon Master's Guide and my 3rd edition Dungeon Master's Guide, this is actually...
so you listened.
This is actually written in Sharpie, big, bold Sharpie on the inside of both of my
listened.
covers. Now, why? Well, it's because there's a temptation to want to start off and build everything, right? To create an entire world with...
I didn't know how far more than you must meant.
Right. What I mean to say is you have this resource, which is the time that you are going to spend preparing for the next session. Okay? You never need to be more than one session ahead of your player.
I've learned that from you.
Right? So now, to that being said, I think that having options and being well prepped, especially before a campaign begins, when you don't have the pressure of a weekly schedule, or whatever rate of play you're playing at, I think that can be very beneficial to have a bunch of stuff prepped. That way you kind of have a, why not take advantage before you start playing?
Yeah.
But once you get into it, don't feel like you need to detail everything out, completely. Just, hey, I'm going to make a dungeon. I think it's going to have about 3 levels. Cool. Well, they're not going to go to level 3 right away.
Yeah, it makes sense.
They're not going to go to level 2 probably right away. Focus your time and attention on what you feel they are going to reach, right? Never force yourself to create more than you must.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Dungeons, do you like them to go up or down?
Done. What do you mean up or down?
Levels. Start it.
Well, level 1 is always level 1.
But then do you submerge?
Well,
or do you go up?
Okay. Well, all right.
I just asking a personal opinion. I like mine to go up.
It doesn't make, one is a tower.
Yeah.
And one, so here's the thing.
What if it does both?
First things first.
That's pretty cool.
People may not know what a dungeon is. So a dungeon historically, right, was the prison cells beneath a castle.
Okay.
And if you look back to 1974 when they first started doing it, that was exactly what it was. It was Castle Blackmore, and it was going into the dungeons underneath the castle, except they were, a little bit bigger than the normal.
Yeah, more than
a castle would be. And so that became the thing, was to go under the ruins. Now that term dungeon, though, now basically means anything. A dungeon could be the burnt out husk of a dead god floating through the endless stars, right? It could be a living elemental beast, and you're exploring its innards as it travels through the elemental plane of Earth. It could be an ancient underground ruin. It could be a series of caverns. It could be a tower. It could be a cliffside ruin. It could be anything. Traditionally, historically, you go down.
Okay. I'm just asking.
It's a little bit more claustrophobic. It's a little bit more, dark and scary to go into the earth than it is to go up.
Okay.
So, any case, so the ideal concept behind this rule is you do not want to be forced into making more, because you might get burned out. You might lose some, passion because you feel like it's work. And more importantly, I think it's okay to a certain extent to leave your options open.
I feel like it's just also a waste of time.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, I don't like wasting time. I don't have much time. I don't need to be wasting it building a world that no one's going to play in, or they're not going to go that way.
Correct. That's also a good point. Now, one of the beautiful things about Dungeons and Dragons is it's not a video game. If the players want to go west and you haven't written west yet, don't think of it as like I need to railroad them to go east. Number one, you can be honest with them. Guys, that sounds awesome. I haven't developed that area yet, so give me some time.
Yep.
Or second, you can just wing it.
That's a little higher level than me right now.
Sure. So, to that end, never create more than you must. Okay. So, what we want to do here today is just think of some ideas about what might this first level dungeon look like for our new players.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And what are some of the unique challenges and things that we need from this dungeon? All right. Now, I said last time that I was going to introduce what I consider to be one of the greatest resources for this of all time. Now, I'm a big fan of inspirational randomness.
Okay.
Right? Which is to say this. I love tables and charts.
Oh, I love that stuff too. I didn't know where you were going with that.
That you don't have to go with it. It just inspires you to go down a different route. Okay?
I love tables.
Okay. Now, I'll be honest with you. Pathfinder books don't have anything. They're horrible. Okay. The 5th edition Dungeon Master Guide is actually pretty good.
Oh, I actually own that.
Okay. It's actually pretty good. They have a pretty good section here about, random dungeons and different types of chambers and rooms to put into it. It's pretty good.
Did that come from the same guy? Did he help develop that then?
No, he did not.
Oh, okay. I was like, maybe that's why.
The 1st edition Dungeon Master's Guide is a classic.
Okay.
It also contains a bunch of information, but the problem with both of these are they give you ideas about things to put in your dungeon, but they don't really talk about what is
and that's what we want.
Your dungeon. What is your dungeon? So what is the high concept? And so for this, we need to come up with two things.
Okay.
One is, what was our dungeon originally?
Mm-hmm.
What is our dungeon now?
Okay.
Okay. So what was its original purpose? Why was it built? Why was it originally put there? Now it's the present.
Yeah.
What is it now? Now it's possible that's like, well, they built it last year. It's the same thing as it was. But chances are, if it was built a long time ago, it isn't that now. Maybe it's a ruin or a rubble. And already, well, you're going to start to ask questions. Well, why is it like that? What happened? Right? And for this, that why, there is no better resource than this.
The Tome of Adventure Design. Jeez, it's right in the title.
The Tome of Adventure Design, or the Toad. Okay? Now, this book is a little bit...
Is that what people call it?
I mean, it's what I call it. Now, this was originally produced by Frog God Games. I think
that even makes funnier sense than it was.
I think what?
Because you call it Toad and it says by Frog.
Oh yeah, sure. I don't. Bob, back with the cough. I swear to you, he wasn't coughing before we even filmed.
I think it's a nighttime talking thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. If you can get a hand on this, I think the PDF is available on DriveThruRPG. I know they did a second printing of it. I love it in hardback. And on the back it says, "Don't panic."
It's because I'm panicking right now.
Yeah. So this book.
When did this come out? I don't know. Is this the original?
Yeah. 2009.
Oh, actually pretty recent.
Well, I mean, that's 12 years ago.
Yeah, but Dungeons and Dragons is.
Oh yeah, yeah. This came out. Pathfinder 1 era.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it's not even that old of a book. Okay, but this is one of the best I've ever seen.
So what, they made this book just for this purpose, or was this part of like a bigger thing they were trying to do?
Nope, just for this purpose.
Wow.
It is nothing but random tables and charts to inspire you.
Wow.
So we'll give an example here. All right.
Jeez, it's literally looking like an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. So here we'll try this. Now it's got a bunch of different
tables. Do I need
tables.
some dice?
Yeah, you're gonna need some percentage dice.
Oh yeah.
All right. Now there's a couple different ways that you could use this. So one, for example, is its purpose. What was the structure's original purpose?
Dwarven Stronghold.
Okay. So here we'll roll percentage. So
87 or 78. Sorry, 78. Dyslexic. What do you want from me?
All right. It is sacrificial.
Okay.
All right.
Sacrificial.
You don't have to write this down because we don't have to. That's the beautiful thing.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes it's just about getting inspired. You don't
sacrificial.
Now roll again.
Oh, okay. 52.
Sacrificial machine.
Whoa.
So, okay. See, your mind already starts clicking there. Maybe,
yeah, I'm thinking some like ancient cog thing.
All right, maybe. Like, what was this dungeon originally built
it's like
for?
13 ghosts.
I don't know what that is.
You never seen 13 Ghosts?
Can't
It's
say
a
I have.
giant machine that needs the spirits of all these people to create this dimensional portal for this like evil demon thing.
See, there you go.
Yeah, and it's trap all these people with all these hieroglyphic symbols and stuff and all these different ghosts.
Right.
It's creepy. So scary.
That might have been what this dungeon originally was. Right? Now, I mean, you could go anywhere with this. It could be when you hear sacrificial machine, it doesn't have to be a machine. Like you might start with that and then you end up with it was a place where, they just they brought people in to sacrifice them to turn them into undead. Kind of like an undead factory, right? Like the idea here is to start with inspiration and to start thinking of ideas for what it might be. So just as an example, maybe roll again.
Oh, okay.
Now for this one,
92.
Now for this one, they have a different table here, which is sort of like the overview of what is this place, or what is this place like, or what is this place? It is the toxic. Roll again.
Toxic.
Yep.
94.
Sanctum.
Keep going.
Of the
76.
Okay, toxic sanctum of the ooze.
Of the ooze. Fucking hate oozes.
Okay. So you're like, okay, I hate oozes. Right. But again,
they've caused me so much trouble.
So the first one's sort of more of like the purpose. This random table is more of like kind of an idea of like, okay, well, what is this place like? Well, it's the toxic sanctum of the ooze. Already, like my mind is like, what if there was a dungeon where an ooze became self-aware and it became intelligent, right? And it created this environment that's super toxic, and it's trying to breed a new type of ooze, right?
Needs to sacrifices.
And no, this might just be a totally separate idea.
Thing. Okay.
Right? It's just about coming up with interesting ideas and kind of deriving this high-level concept, right? What is your dungeon? Why was it there? Or what is going on there now, right?
Yeah.
So, to that end, now this is also where, now I'm talking about these as from a random book.
Yeah.
I love doing that. It's fun. It's a fun mental exercise. You can also take one of your favorite books, one of your favorite movies, one of your favorite TV shows, put a twist on it. Your players will never know.
They'll watch the same animes as me.
Except for using the same anime. And again, like a lot of time, you get a lot of mileage by filing the serial numbers off of something, right? That you really enjoy or that you really like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
And
tropes or something you see on a movie or a TV show, you can be like, that sounds cool if I took it and twisted a bit.
Correct. And so taking a basic idea like that and twisting it can be very, very, very effective. So let's think about, what was your dungeon? What any sort of thoughts?
Dwarven Stronghold.
Okay, so it's a Dwarven
I love dwarves.
Okay, you love dwarves. Okay, so it was built as a Dwarven stronghold.
Yeah.
All right. Now that's where it was originally built.
Yeah, I just gotta get careful I don't go down Lord of the Rings trails here. Or Hobbit trails.
I mean, that could be where you're like, then what happened? A dragon took over.
Because I love dragons too. It's like, okay. But I actually like
there is the problem of being very unoriginal, which, you can, which is fine, because again, this is your game, and I promise you it's not going to run out the same as The Hobbit.
Correct. What's the one in The Hobbit? Lord of the Rings. What's the one that they have to go through?
Moria,
where the Balrog comes up. Yeah. That concept's cooler, where there's like a Dwarven stronghold that they went too far deep.
Sure.
And awoken something.
Right.
I like that overarching concept.
Now, when we talked about design, we also have to keep in mind, right? All these things are you're juggling a lot of, balls here. Development purposes. That's cool. That's a great concept. Not great for a level 1 adventure.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Sounds so cool.
Right. That's another thing that you have to consider.
Well, I start running before I learn to walk.
Well, right. Okay. Well, but then you're making a level 15 adventure.
I know. And that's my point. I'm thinking like, I want them to fight a dragon. And it's like, Bob?
Well, okay. And that already, by the way, is a bad attitude to have.
I know.
I want them to fight a dragon. No.
Well,
what if you put a dragon in your dungeon and they go, fuck that. I'm never fighting this thing ever.
Yeah. I don't know that.
Right? Like, you can't have, the whole point of this exercise is for you to create an environment that's just interesting. And whether or not the players ever go there, it's still cool.
So how do you make it interesting then? If you, like saying if it was a Dwarven stronghold, they would, I think, hoard gold.
Okay.
Treasure's interesting.
Sure.
Treasure
so
makes people want to come there.
We'll follow this line of reasoning. Okay. Now, this isn't a Dwarven city, right? Because remember, this is a dungeon, right? So this is a Dwarven stronghold. Okay. Why did the dwarves build a stronghold here? So when I'm thinking of stronghold, I'm thinking like a fortress or like a bunker.
Yeah, it's on the outskirts.
It's on the outskirts. Why is there a Dwarven fortress here? Dwarven stronghold here.
Dwarven stronghold here is my thought. Something is trying to come this way. The ogres or the giants or something.
Okay, so this was a defensive position.
Yes.
Now, the dwarves would store a lot of gold in one of their defensive positions?
That's a good point. Yeah, if it was an offensive position, they would go out and get stuff. Maybe come back because this is the closest spot they have until they can get it back to the city.
So the dwarves are attacking?
That doesn't sound right. I feel like they're defensive.
Okay. I don't know about that, but
I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know who they'd be attacking.
No, but I think you've hit a key reason. Again, you're thinking about this is not just an idea. This is going to be a play space. And that means it's going to be a place where you want to be playing Dungeons and Dragons. And so ultimately, it means you need an excuse for there to be monsters and treasure and things like that in this dungeon.
So it could be offensive and defensive, though, because you're trying to think of if you had a city, you're trying to expand your territory.
Sure. Well, take a step back, though. What kind of... don't get so caught up on that initial concept. Okay. You said Dwarven stronghold.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go with dwarves. What kind of Dwarven place would have a lot of money or would have treasure and gold?
The main city.
Okay, but what he said before, it's not a main city.
Not this place is not the main
yeah,
city.
so ignore that. So what would have money and wealth and maybe magic?
Dwarven mine.
Okay, a mine, but that's, maybe not what we're going for. And that's just raw ore. We're thinking treasure. We're thinking gold. So what might have that?
A dwarven mine that mines gold.
Okay. All right. So maybe they were mining gold.
They could be.
Okay.
They need to protect it.
Maybe they needed to protect it.
But then you're getting close to
Mines of Moria.
Yeah.
So what if you take it a different route? What if this was a place where the dwarves traded?
Yeah. That's one thing. More of like an outskirt thing. They needed to hold a position though, because something is wanting this area.
Sure. So who are they trading with?
Not the elves.
Why not the elves?
I don't know. Not going there.
One of the things that you have to think about when you're designing a dungeon is what is going to make this, because remember, we talked about this before in the last episode. Ideally, you are going to build a series of layers, like an onion, of the history and some of the cool facts about your dungeon. And you're not going to just tell that to your players. They're going to learn it as they go through it. What's a lot more interesting and a lot more fun when some of those things are surprises. Okay. And we're kind of touching here on the second rule of Dungeoncraft, but the second rule of Dungeoncraft is whenever you create some element in your campaign, if you can, create or attach a secret to it.
Okay.
Right? So that means that as the players start to uncover it, they are going to feel like they are uncovering something. They are learning something.
So what if this is just a trade post? They trade with whoever is in the region, but they don't trade with the elves.
Okay.
But this one did.
Okay. That could be interesting.
That's what I was kind of getting at. It's like they shouldn't be, because the main city is like, that's a no.
All right.
But it's like sort of like prison life, you gotta, they got the goods, and they're offering something. I don't know what they're offering, but they have offered something, and it makes it worth it to trade with the elves.
Okay, so this dwarven post, this dwarven trading outpost, traded with the elves, which made them extremely wealthy.
Yes.
Right?
And probably items that probably they shouldn't have.
Maybe, right. Getting lots of stuff. And so this dwarven outpost was doing all sorts of business and trade, okay? And in this sort of remote frontier location, right? Trading dwarven goods for elven riches.
Yep.
Right? Cool. Now that's what that dungeon was.
Yes.
Right? It's trading with the elves.
Yep.
Great wealth is being gathered here. Okay? What happened? And more importantly, what is it now?
So my first thought was, and maybe it's not even elves. Maybe they're trading with like the ogres or something.
Something even more?
Something actually evil, like aligned evil.
Okay.
Okay. As I'm trying to think about this, because I'm thinking either something went bad.
Okay.
So I'm thinking like
they were betrayed.
Bad drug deal. You know what I mean? Like they did something they weren't supposed to. They were sort of doing this on the down low.
Okay.
And they betrayed. Maybe a separate clan was like, "What are you doing? You shouldn't be doing that with them." And
you're saying a dwarven
clan maybe could be.
Now the thing
that sounds a little rough.
Possibly.
Though being overrun by ogres sounds a little bit more werealistic. Or
well,
something
again,
along that lines.
we're talking about a level 1 dungeon, so it probably wasn't ogres. Now, granted, it could have been overrun by ogres and then they left.
Or goblins.
Sure, goblins
something.
could be it. Right.
I'm thinking evil aligned, you shouldn't be trading with these people.
Okay.
So elves, not evil aligned, just dwarves usually do not like them. But, this is a trade post. Maybe that's not a big deal. But you probably shouldn't be trading with the goblins or the kobolds or something along these lines.
All right. Or the orcs or anything like that.
Or orcs, yeah.
Okay. Now, what happened? Because now this dungeon it's a ruin, right? The dwarves aren't living here anymore doing trading. Otherwise, the adventurers wouldn't be coming here to do adventure. They're coming here because they've heard that the great wealth of the dwarves still lies up in that old dwarven stronghold.
Yep.
Waiting to be taken.
Yep.
But now it is a dangerous place.
Yeah.
Right? With lots of baddies. And only a stout adventurer with ready sword and spell is going to be able to brave the dangers to bring back that dwarven booty and loot and bring it back to the lands of civilization and, spend it like a boss. So we need to think about that's what the dungeon was. What is the dungeon now? Right? What is it going on there now?
Well, it doesn't have to be in ruins, right? Like
define ruin. I mean, I don't mean literally a pile of rubble.
That's what I thought you meant. I'm like, no, it's a Dwarven Stronghold. This place is built.
I just mean like no one's sweeping it.
Correct. Yeah, no one's there anymore. Well, someone might be there occupying.
Right, we can get to talk about that later. But
so I think it's sort of like I don't know. I don't know enough. I don't know what happened, but I think it got overran.
Okay. So that's a good thing to go with.
Yeah.
And I think
something happened and it got overran.
Right. Now, again, we don't have to create more than we must, but remember I said before, I think answering these questions is tremendously valuable because it's really going to help you when you're building the treasure and you're building, because now when you're going to get to a point, when you go into this dungeon, when you build it yourself, you're going to see two incredible things happen.
Okay.
One is, you won't, a lot of people go, well, APs and adventures and I got to flip through it and I got to read it. And then my players go into a room and I got to read it. You're going to find you don't even have to do that.
Oh, because it's just,
you're like, I know this like the back of my hand.
Do you find that when you did that in the past?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I know you know the dungeons by the back of your hand when you've run it like 2 times.
Correct. Well, if you nothing makes you remember a dungeon more than playing it.
Very true.
But when you've built it yourself, you almost don't need your notes.
Okay.
Because you're just, exactly. But the most important thing, I think that's...
And it would also make logical sense. Like if you built it correctly, like a good dungeon you're saying, you would be like, yeah, they enter here because this is where you enter. And this is, I know that room is the...
Correct.
Workshop. I know that room is the whatever.
You already know what everything
physically makes sense too.
Exactly. But the most important thing is...
random.
Not random. The other thing that makes this is even better, you don't understand, you don't just understand the what of the dungeon, but you understand the why, which means if the players do something that you weren't expecting, or they create or do something that, wasn't really in your original plan, when you have to improvise, it's going to feel very consistent because you understand.
Yeah, you'll the flavor.
You know the flavor of this dungeon. You understand, you're like, oh, the players go, well, we're going to go down the well. And, and you're like, oh, I never thought they would go down the well. But then you start thinking about well, I know where this dungeon is and I know how this operates. Maybe the well goes down into a shaft that they use to smuggle in the goods from the goblins.
Yeah.
You can just fill in the details and it's going to feel like you did have it prepared. Because it's going to feel, because you're just going to basically take all that creative preparing work that you've been doing over the last few weeks, and you're just going to pick it right back up again and start doing it extemporaneously right on the spot.
That makes me think maybe they were dealing with the goblins, or some of the dwarfs were dealing with the goblins, not the whole, not the whole place. That got found out.
Okay.
They said we got to cut it off. That didn't make the goblins, the orcs happy. They're like, no, we've established this trade.
Sure.
You need to be here.
Okay.
And you're cutting us off. I don't think that's how this works.
All right. Maybe that is what happened.
Yeah.
All right.
Something like that.
And they got invaded.
Yeah. They were like, no, then we're just going to take your whole fort.
Yeah. So now we're going to go to a series of questions, right? Okay, but why? All right. Well, it's a Dwarven stronghold designed specifically probably to prevent this.
Yeah.
How did they get overrun?
Somebody was a traitor.
What's that?
Traitor.
Oh, it could be a traitor. I like the traitor concept. That's not where I was thinking. Well,
I'd like to hear what you're thinking, because I was thinking more like,
okay, well,
you promised me that if you take the fort, I get X amount of gold.
And that I think it's actually an awesome angle.
Yeah.
And maybe we should come
in the back door.
Yeah, maybe we should go into it. So maybe a Dwarven person
or a handful
or a group of the dwarves were mad that the trade got cut off.
And they were like,
they wanted a cut.
Yep.
And so they betrayed the dwarves and they let them in through the secret back entrance or something like that. And the dwarves got wiped out that way.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
But the people might not know any of this. They just know it got overran. How could it be overrun? I don't know, but they all died.
Correct. Now,
what was the route you were thinking?
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
Here, but well, I was thinking that maybe the goblins brought a dragon.
Oh, I love a dragon.
And that would have the firepower, literally, maybe.
Why isn't dragon eating the goblins?
He's allied with them. They're like his servants.
So he's going in to get the gold?
Yeah. Basically, the goblins are like, oh, this whole time they've been working for the dragon.
I do love a dragon.
I do. But that's okay. Dragons are pretty high level. But.
Yeah, okay. What's the lowest level? What's like a little wormling?
Well, wormling's not a very impressive final boss.
Okay. I guess it depends on the size of your dungeon, because it's like, what level are you when you get to the quote-unquote and near the quote unquote end.
And again, we're just talking high level today. Like I said, it is an elaborate process. And, I mean, I do think that this is probably going to be like 8 hours of video.
Look, if I can just get a dragon in there somewhere.
I mean, maybe that's a possibility. Now, sometimes things go in stages. It does go in stages, right? Like, depending on how long ago this happened, you might have had the Dwarven Stronghold 100 years ago, and then it got overran, and then it was abandoned. And then a dragon has moved in and claimed it as his lair.
But then I'm almost back to Hobbit.
You're correct.
And as much as I love that.
Right. Whereas the trader angle is a little bit more unique. That's not something straight out of a Lord of the Rings movie, right?
Well, I'm just trying to think, you're right. How does a stronghold get overrun? Usually it's because either there's a weak point somewhere.
Right.
I knew that if I shot the blast right here, I'd blow up the whole Death Star.
Right.
Or it's someone let them in.
Right.
And that's usually how you get overran.
Right. So,
especially if you got a stronghold.
So I think that's a really cool idea, and I think we should go with that.
Okay.
Right. So the dwarves were betrayed by one of their own, and then these evil humanoids, goblins, orcs, we haven't really decided yet.
Yeah.
They came in, they killed the dwarves, and now presumably at the time there was untold wealth here, right? But they took most of it.
They took what they could find.
They could take what they could find, right?
Because the dwarves have great locks and
that's right.
vaults and traps and stuff like that.
And now that stuff is still waiting for our adventurers today.
Yeah.
So the goblins or the orcs came in, they killed the dwarves, they took what treasure they could take and find, and they fled, leaving this place ruined and abandoned.
Yeah.
Now, it's our first dungeon. That alone might just be enough.
Okay.
Right? But if the dungeon was old enough, or if you want to add, remember, it's like
why did they build the stronghold here?
Why did they build the stronghold here? Or maybe that happened, and then did something else happen after that? Right? Maybe it was 200 years ago, and then that happened, and now it's abandoned. Well, maybe between now and then, something else happened. Like a group of creatures moved into the dungeon because they wanted a place to conduct their secret experiments. And what you start doing is you start creating these layers, these sort of plans within plans within plans within plans. And you end up developing all these different factions that are within your dungeon, right? And we might end up doing this anyways, right? Because now you suddenly have this remote, really, really durable dwarven stronghold that's kind of out in the middle of the wilderness, seemingly abandoned, but it's a great place to do your evil deeds or to set up camp or...
Yeah, if you can hold it, it's yours.
If you can hold it, it's yours. But sometimes if the dungeon's big enough, maybe you can't hold all of it.
Oh, that's right. If there's multi-levels.
You might only be able to hold part of it. So you might have a dungeon where part of the dungeon is controlled by kobolds. Part of the dungeon is controlled by goblins. Maybe they don't like each other. Maybe they have a greater enemy. Maybe there's 3 different factions. And so you can start brainstorming about these different components, about what they want, what they need. And this is how that sort of emergent storytelling of a dungeon can occur. And why it doesn't always have to just be fight, 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 kill, 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 because that whole my enemy of my enemy is my friend thing.
Yeah.
So now my suggestion though is we've got this dwarven stronghold.
Yes.
It's betrayed.
Yes.
Dwarves enter, they kill.
And the evil people enter.
The evil goblins, something enter. They kill everybody. That's cool, but this is sort of my take. As a sort of another rule of Dungeoncraft. Whenever you do something in D&D, whenever you make a detail, if you can, try to add something fantastical.
Okay.
Right? Because aside from the fact that we just talked about dwarves. Everything that we just described could have happened in medieval Europe.
Yes.
Right? There was a trading post in the Alps, and the Germans were trading with the Italians, and then the Italians cut off the trade, and then the one guy in the Italians betrayed them, and the Germans entered and killed everybody and took the loot and left.
Yep.
Right? So everything we just said there could happen in the real world.
Okay.
So that's good. Being grounded, 1 foot grounded in reality will make your thing feel like it's not just some like, woo-woo, like some silly kid, like the kind of RPG you would run for your daughter.
Yes, it feels real. Now let's put it into fantasy.
Let's take another, that's the left foot. The left foot is grounded in reality. Now for our concept, let's take that right foot and stick it into something fantastical.
Okay.
Right? What are some things, or what is one thing that we can add to this dungeon that will increase the fantasy level of it?
The undead.
That's a great one. And to be honest with you, That's where I was going to.
I could easily think that this stronghold was here a long time ago, like we said. It got overran. There's multiple people trying to fight for this. Something that can create undead has found a way to kind of get himself in there pretty good.
Yeah.
And he's not easily taken out.
Well, so and again, remember, it's all about the secrets. Now, this is me wearing my DM hat, right? The dwarves that died there that day, right? Their spirits did not rest easy.
They were betrayed.
Vengeance, betrayed by their own, right? I think that those dwarven undead, because when you think about zombies and you think about skeletons, what do you think of? You think of human zombies, right?
Yes, actually, you're right. That's the first thing I thought of.
Right?
Human-sized skeleton.
Human-sized skeleton. Human-sized zombie. What about a dungeon where a good chunk of them are dwarven zombies?
I do love dwarves.
You do love dwarves, right?
Undead dwarfs.
So, and this also starts to sort of build into this idea of, like, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Let me just write down undead dwarfs. Hold on.
That's a great, right? That's a great concept, right? Now, by the way, I don't disagree with what you're saying. Because now we can start adding in layers. Because maybe there is some evil necromancer. And they've come to the dungeon because maybe they want to learn from this power.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to try to control the undead and use them as like a dwarven undead army. And they're trying to like control them.
Maybe. I was thinking more, the dwarfs didn't really know where they were.
What do you mean?
This wizard, necromancer dude, he knows that in the stronghold or within this area, there's more underneath, more that meets the eye.
Okay.
Dwarfs never tapped that down that far.
Okay.
They just built a stronghold because they needed a position.
Gotcha.
But he knows that if he can hold this, he's able to, like a ley line.
Okay.
Or something along those lines.
Okay.
I know this area is important for dark energy.
Okay, so you're saying that the reason the dwarves came back to unlife is because there's this secret
ley line or something.
Secret ley line of evil energy.
Yep.
And this necromancer's trying to tap into it. But it also gives that's also very awesome.
Okay. Let me just write down the ley line.
I know you love missions.
What? Did you say mission?
Right, missions. But another thing that makes a dungeon interesting is to have all these different angles.
Okay.
Because now it's like, well, okay, we go to this dungeon. We came here for treasure.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, but now there's a necromancer and we can stop him. But wait, if we stop him, maybe when you go to stop him, you learn about the ley line.
Yeah.
And then that's like a whole separate quest.
Because you wouldn't even know, like, why are the dwarfs not alive?
Well, I'll give you an example.
They should be dead.
They should be. When you go there and you fight the dwarven zombies, you might think, why are there so many dwarven zombies here?
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the necromancer and you think, oh, it's the necromancer. And then you kill the necromancer. And then the dwarven zombies are still around. And that's when you realize, oh, there's something deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And then the party goes deeper. And now maybe when they deal with that energy source, maybe the dwarves finally are at rest.
Yeah.
And these are all great, like, heroic quests that the heroes, and the dwarven spirits, the zombies crumble to dust, and the dwarven spirits go to the party and they thank them in the dwarven way and they give them the blessing of the dwarven ancestors and depart to the next life, right?
They get some kind of cool feat that you can't only get if you beat the dungeon.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. But so now you're starting to tell these different stories with your dungeon and you're starting to build this sort of depth to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fantastic idea. So we have this dwarven stronghold, this sort of trading post, okay? And it's built over a secret source.
Yeah, some kind of ley line.
A secret source of energy.
Yes.
And the dwarves were trading with potentially some unsavory characters.
Yep.
They got cut off.
Could have been a little bit corrupted by that ley line. They didn't even know.
Oh, so that's even better.
They didn't know.
Why did those dwarves go bad?
They didn't know.
They didn't know, right? They became corrupted by greed, right? Tap into some of the tropes. I don't think that's a bad thing. Oh, evil dwarf, greedy, just like Thorin, because you can even tell that you're running this for mostly new players.
Yes.
So when you can go, they've got the gold sickness, just like Thorin from the Hobbit movie. You know how he got.
Yeah. They start to relate.
They start to relate, and now they can connect to it, and so it makes it easier for you to have those touchstones, and they can just take those touchstones and immediately start role playing it appropriately.
That makes sense.
Instead of you having to like explain to them what something is, they go, "Oh, I get it."
Yep.
When a player goes, okay, I got it. Cool.
Yeah,
great.
you want to say, like, they might have been corrupted by greed, and you're like, they have the gold sickness? You're like, this guy knows.
This guy knows, right?
He knows exactly what's going on.
So you have this dark energy. It corrupts some of the dwarves. They start trading with the goblins.
Yep.
The other dwarves, banish them and cut it off. Those dwarves filled with that evil betray the dwarves. They know the secret entrance. They open it up for their goblin allies who come in and slaughter the dwarves. Yep. those dwarves die, but betrayed, filled with vengeance over this evil source of energy. Now they come back as undead.
Yep.
For many years, people stay away. It's another reason. Why is the treasure still there? Well, because it's filled with dwarven undead.
Yeah.
People don't fuck with that.
Yeah. Maybe and maybe the first couple rooms is goblins.
You
orcs,
got it exactly.
Because now they can only go so far in.
You got it perfectly, right? Because now you can start to create different sort of like themed areas of the dungeon.
Well, it makes sense. Like, yeah, if you go any farther, that's where the big stuff is. And you can't go that far.
And you go to say, why don't the goblins go any farther than that? Because they'll get killed by dwarven zombies.
Yeah, and that's like in Moria. I never know the names.
Sure.
What they don't they don't go below when the Balrog comes up. They're like, we're out of here.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So
they know.
One of the coolest things that you can do in a dungeon is to avoid monolithic evil. Okay. Monolithic evil is like, we're team evil.
Yeah.
You're evil. I'm evil. We're evil. We'll all just work together. We're all evil. No. Right. Like I could imagine a situation where maybe the dwarven skeletons and the dwarven undead and the dwarven zombies, they hate the goblins more than they hate the party.
They're in their stronghold.
Right. Right. So you could see a situation where, like, imagine where the players like lure goblins. Maybe there's too many of them, you know, like there's 20.
Oh gosh.
like in our near TPK on Friday night, you and I, where we
a lot of goblins.
Yeah, where we fought 20 goblins, right? Which was too many, and you survived.
I ran away the first time I've ever run away on purpose.
Yes, I died, and everyone else died. But if you fought a room with 20 goblins, and you go, guys, I got an idea. What if we lure these goblins into that room with all the dwarven skeletons? Let them fight each other.
Makes sense.
Right? That is the kind of emergent, you're like, I never thought that, we're talking about it now, but you might be like, I never thought that would happen. But I've got my dungeon. Yep. I know this place like the back of my hand. Goblins, those skeletons, they'll hate the goblins. That's what killed them. Now, though, you've got this really cool story, and you've created these sort of different areas, and the dungeons will feel different. But as the players realize that there's dwarven undead here, they're going to go, okay, well, why? And that's when they start to learn about this necromancer. And then they might go, oh, we want to go take him out. Or maybe they won't.
And that's my point, is maybe they just want to get to the goal.
Yeah.
And like the necromancer, not our
concern.
Yep.
And that's okay. Because you're not writing an adventure. You're not writing a plot.
You're just building a place.
You're building a place. You're putting some different factions, some different individuals, some different monsters in there.
It also adds nice treasure, because if the skeletons have their old armor,
exactly,
their old weapons, this is dwarven stronghold weapons.
Exactly.
This could be good stuff.
Right. It could be good stuff. It could be treasures, magical armor, magical weapons, right? And I think it's also okay to have some themes, like, right? Maybe not a lot of wands. Maybe not a lot of scrolls, right? That's not a dwarven
if you want
thing.
That, you better go take on the necromancer.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And you might have a party member go, guys, we've gotten all these cool magical swords. I kind of want a magical staff. And even better is like when you start to foreshadow that, like maybe a goblin, they've tangled with the necromancer. They're not on the same team. And maybe the party allies with the goblins, or maybe they get one prisoner and he wants to talk for his freedom. And he goes, beware the necromancer's staff.
Yeah.
It's very powerful, full of magic.
Little goblin Bob made it too close. Zapped him.
Right, he zapped him. And then the wizard goes, oh, I kind of want that staff. Right?
It's guys, powerful.
Guys, maybe we should go take this necromancer out. I just want the treasure. But now you're doing the same things you'd be doing in a D&D game or Pathfinder game anyways, right? Fighting things, exploring things, doing all this stuff. But it has context.
Correct.
And the players, I think, will become 9 times out of 10 interested. And you're going to end up with this cool little story. And it's all condensed in this one interesting place. It's full of all these different areas. And I think that is what you do with a concept, is you start with an idea of what was this place originally? What is this place now?
Yes.
And once you have that sort of high level concept, look, we already know what monsters we might need to start looking at in our bestiary.
Yep.
We already know what kind of magical items might be present here.
Yes.
Right? Do you think that there might be a magical axe here? A Dwarven War Axe? I think there could be a magical Dwarven War Axe here.
Or a Warhammer or Maul.
A Warhammer Maul.
My favorite things.
Probably not a magic longbow.
Probably not.
Right? Because that doesn't feel appropriate with the dungeon. Right?
It might be in the traded loot.
Possibly. And even that could be
like
very
an
different.
Elven bow.
Right?
Like,
even
they
that.
were trading with the elves.
And that's also still part of that storytelling of the dungeon. You're like, oh yeah, well they did trade with a lot of things. This was like the Elven quarter, the Elven section, and there's some different type of loot here. And the player goes, oh, that's cool. Like
that makes
sense. Resonates. It makes sense. When the players go, yep, that makes sense, then you're doing it right.
Okay.
You know?
Because that makes sense to me. Like, if they're trading, that's how they would get the bows. But again, they're still not, the bows, them is like more like just stuff that they're going to trade for something else.
Correct.
But they're probably still not accumulating wands because they're just they're getting from elves and humans, maybe.
Yeah, and so once you have this sort of high level concept, you can start doing the rest of your design process.
Okay.
You know, and we can start touching that. Now we'll cover that next time.
Oh, okay.
You know, for our next video.
Okay.
Where we're going to sort of start delving into sort of the more specific elements that need to be designed, right? Like when we sort of start touching on them here, the factions and all that other stuff.
Okay.
You know, and we can kind of get into that next time. I think that's a really cool design, and I think that that's a really cool high level concept, and I definitely think that we should go with that.
I like it. It made more sense. And like I said, if we could just add a dragon somewhere, then my dungeon's perfect.
Right. Now, you know, sometimes you gotta, you know, you can force it. But now here's the thing.
But that's what I don't want to force it, even though I want to force it.
Sure.
Like me, Bob, this is so cool.
Right.
Wants to force it. Me, Bob, the GM that's learning and developing, and I want to actually make it make sense, reasonable.
Yeah. Well, so here, I'll tell you what. So for folks at home, if you are interested in hearing about a design concept that does definitely include a dragon at the end, we're going to be put some extra footage together, and we're going to drop that as part of our Patreon for our patron exclusively. So if you're interested in learning some more concepts that we may have kind of spitballed around that we didn't have time to show on this already very long YouTube video, please take a look at our Patreon. Decide if you want to support us there. And if you do, we're going to have some extra bonus content that we're going to put onto Patreon that didn't quite make the cut and didn't quite make the edit to YouTube.
And if not, continue to like, subscribe, follow us, because we're going to continue this series as I continue to develop this dungeon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a really cool concept, and I'm interested, excited to go through it. And again, especially for these design concepts, this applies for 5th edition and this applies for Pathfinder 2. And I know that most of our audience is Pathfinder 2 based. But if you're here and you're predominantly a 5th edition player, let us know in the comments, because that's another thing that we might want to consider doing, is making sure that we really include some 5th edition level statistics as well.
Okay.
And I should also note that for people who decide to make the Patreon, we are going to be putting this dungeon onto the Patreon as we build it step by step by step. So if you really want to get the actual content as Bob builds it, that's going to be on the Patreon.
Yeah, it's going to be sweet.
Yeah.
At least I hope so.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us for Night School. On behalf of Bob, my name is Derek Melinda, saying welcome to the Knights of Last Call.